All right, so I'm Duane Gamble, CG of Army Sustainment Command at Rock Island Arsenal, and so I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes talking to you about how we're posturing Army Sustainment Command for, to support large-scale ground combat operations in support of our Army. So before I get any further, Scott, raise your hand. So Colonel Dobozinski's here, and Mr. Eaton, raise your hand, George. I brought them from Rock Island. We have a little station over here in the corner, and they'll deep dive on, or I will too, deep dive with you on any piece of this you'd like to learn more about, or where you think Army Sustainment Command's going. So we got about 20 minutes, and I'll just give you a kind of big overview. So let me have the next slide. So these are kind of our lines of effort, right? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this chart. These are General Perna's big strategic focused areas. So everything we're doing are nested in that. And you can look at our lines of effort there. You notice there's not anything in there that says log cap or any of our functional things, right? It's about really enabling the talent we have in Army Sustainment Command and unleashing that talent, but doing it in a way that is focused, and it's focused on an output. And that output is, next slide, is getting ready to support large-scale ground combat operations. So you'll notice it said the Army strategy, and everything on here except for this is the Army strategy that I hope you all recognize, right? Our Army strategy started in 2018. We have a decisive phase line in 2022 of readiness. We have a phase line in 2028 as overmatch. Well, in between 2022 and 2028, we will start inserting the materiel that is coming out of the cross-functional teams into our Army, and that's when our Army switches from a main effort of readiness to a sustainment, and then procuring modern systems. So it's about delivering CFT capability to the field. And so how we posture an ASC to enable that Army and be ready out here when we have to support multi-domain operations. So we're doing it using the same categories as the Army strategy, and let's click on the first one. So for the first one, in terms of manning, we've increased the capability of our 7 Army Field Support Brigades over the last about 2 years. The 7 Army Field Support Brigades and our 23 Army Field Support Battalions. We've deliberately, through an effort we called ASC Futures that Lieutenant General Daly started when he was the ASC commander, and we're now in the implementation phase of that. We've deliberately tried to man our AFSBNs and our brigades. I call it thickening the mission command structure at echelon in order to, with a long view, prepare ourselves to solve more complex problems in support of divisions and corps. We've aligned, go to organization, we've aligned our mission set against division and corps, as you'd expect us to do, and we're still connected to Army Service Motor Commands and our one field Army, the 8th Army, but in CONUS, we have brigade commanders aligned against our 3 corps. We've submitted about almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, an O&O plan to CASCOM that defined the Corps logistics support element, the division logistics support element, and the brigade logistics support element, and what those things are, and how we intend to deploy ASC in support of large-scale ground combat operation. So if you think about where we have been in our organizational construct in Afghanistan and Iraq and even in Kuwait, we have forward AFSBs, brigades forward, that own kind of the theater space. And that holds true for all 6 Army Service Component Commands and 8th Army. And then we have battalions forward that kind of manage the battle space from an AMC perspective. Of course, their task, in layman's terms, is bring the power of the material enterprise to bear on tactical problems at the corps and division level. Really, the question comes in, how do we see ourselves deploying our CONUS-based corps and divisions into that battle space? And you see the AFSBs tailoring a small package, right, of military and senior command reps from the LCMCs to go forward with a corps and plug into the theater AFSB, right? I only imagine, and our O&O plan reflects it, and our new FM40 will reflect it, is one AFSB in a theater for a large-scale ground combat operation, but multiple core logistics support elements as these corps enter the theater. Same with division at the DLSE level. The AFSBN We'll deploy the battalion commander and a small staff element with SSTRs that represent the LCMCs into a theater with the division and with the intent of plugging them into that theater AFSB. And then same at the brigade level, except brigade level operations, candidly, we think of it more as the application of the Army Logistics Assistance Program in support of brigades, and not through a brigade-centric lens, through a division-centric lens. So a pooling, if you will, of LARs at the division level, and then in concert with the division commander, the G4, and the AFSBN commander, applying that capability where it's needed and weighting the main effort instead of where we've been in our current counterterrorism fight. Every brigade has its own, right? And I got mine, you got yours. It'll be more of a division-centric approach. We are in the middle of doing LOGCAP change management, changing the way we do LOGCAP change management in the field. And again, it's going to be brigade and battalion-centric from our viewpoint instead of FOB-centric, and that's where we've been for a decade or so, with having LOGCAP support officers out on individual FOBs managing the program. We're going to pool that assets at the battalion and the brigade level, so we have a more disciplined, in my words, a more disciplined approach to how we do LOGCAP change management in the field. Right now, it's very decentralized. Let's go to train, please. So as we train this, it's about preparing our next generation of LCMC LARs. What do we want them focused on? The LCMC commanders, the JMC commander, and I are engaged in OPT with General Perner right now, projecting the not only the future of the AMC LAP program, the Logistics Assistance Program, but then how do we actually train, man, and equip our LARs to perform that function. We're currently, I talked to you about the DLSE, for CTC rotations, and the CLSE, the Core Logistics Support Element for warfighters. Both of those nodes are engaged today in core warfighters and at the CTCs. We just started deploying them, and in fact last week I was at NTC checking on the Division Logistics Support Element. So what we've required is for AFSBN commanders to deploy to the Combat Training Center with the traditional brigade logistics support element, the AMC LARs that support a rotation. But we're sending a battalion commander and a small tailored staff to plug in with the notional division headquarters at the CTCs. At Fort, I think at Fort Polk, it might be the 51st Division. I can't remember what is an NTC. Some notional division and the hierarchy, so they can start thinking through, these young battalion commanders can start thinking through the AMC concept of support for a large-scale ground combat operation. And I'm requiring them both to brief me and my headquarters on a back brief and their senior commander on the notional division operations that are wrapped around that CTC. So while it sounds a little esoteric, it's been really a fruitful drill for our battalion commanders to go through. Some of you may remember the LTP process that you go through before you go to a combat training center, the logistics or the leader training program. So that's the way I see these CTCs, is really grabbing every opportunity we possibly can to start thinking about the new doctrine, because candidly, by 2028, our March objective is we're lethal ready and modernized to some degree, and AMC and really the AFSBs and the AFSBNs have to be ready. And so we're using every opportunity we can in here to train leaders on what that looks like, because conceptually it briefs well on an O&O plan that this little DLSE is going to deploy, but until you actually practice it, right, you'll really learn more through repetition. By June this year, I told the brigade we'll get 11 reps in by June, right, because there's 2 CTCs, right? If you do the math, it's 11 or 12 reps by June, that's 24 reps by December, and you can start getting pretty excited about this idea of what we're going to build. And so it won't surprise you that these are CSL selected battalion commanders, are smart men and women, but the first back brief I took at the end of December before the first DLSC deployed to a CTC was, where am I going to sleep? Where are my LARs going to sleep? How are they going to get in the box? That was the concept. That's where we started. It's a little bit of hyperbole in that, but not much better than that. And today it's phase 0, phase 1 through phase 5. What's a CUOPS? What's in the current operations framework for that battalion? What's in the future operations framework for that battalion? How they're engaged with this notional division, and it's just a notional division, right? So we got a lot of work to do. But the first DLSE deployed to Afghanistan with 4th ID in January, right? And Randy George, to his credit, I never called him, right, the division commander, and said, hey, Randy, would you take, the battalion commander went to him and said, hey, this is this new concept. We want to train like we fight. And he took a cut on his own division FML to take the DLSE. Now, it's a one-person DLSE that deployed. Well, we took then John Lopes, my battalion commander in Afghanistan, just chopped all the SSTRs to that deploying major and that part of his staff to the deploying major. So at the cost of one, we're really exercising it in Afghanistan today. Let's go down to doctrine real quick. And so you'll see these same changes showing up in the new FM40 that CASCOM and Rodney Fogg are working on. So what I hope I gave you is a little bit of insight as to where we're headed in Army Sustainment Command. What I didn't mention are some of the really fundamental changes we made, and I'll just throw them out there real quick, and then I'll take any questions you have. So back in June of 2018, we merged at 12 locations. We merged our AFSBN, our battalions, with the logistics readiness centers. So on divisional posts, to include Korea and U.S. Army Alaska, actually it's 13 now today, we've merged the LRC, the Installation Logistics Support AMC is responsible for, with our AFSBNs. So there's a single face to the field at the tactical level. Right, so now a senior commander doesn't have to look at a uniformed member and say, you do what for AMC, and then look at a civilian LRC director, say, you got the installation piece and you got this other piece. Those former LRC directors are the deputies to those battalion commanders today. Candidly, I think that we've been talking about that for a long time. We couldn't reconcile, maybe as an institution, the idea that a GS-15 might work for a CSL Select Lieutenant Colonel. We made the choice to not care about that, and frankly, it's worked out just fine. One person retired, one GS-15 retired, and the rest of them put on their training, coaching, and leader hat. And to Bob Bishop, our great former LRC director, now our AFSBN commander at Fort Hood, described it to me as saying, I've been developing leaders my whole career, and it's another chance for me to develop a leader. So this merger at the AFSBN level and the LRC level, I think, has been very powerful for us, and it's helped us, again, set the stage for this, right? It's all nested in the Army strategy. So what are your questions on where the last one, I knew there was one more. About a year ago, we eliminated the blast teams, right? The 04s that were in the brigades as blast teams, we eliminated those positions, or not eliminated positions, eliminated the function, and then that's what we used. We used those officers to thicken our mission command capability of the brigade battalion. It's my belief that as we move from a brigade-centric modular army to a division and corps-centric army ready to fight large-scale ground combat, that the problems get harder at the division and corps level, and the ability for the material enterprise to anticipate and to solve problems at the tactical level, hopefully solve problems through anticipation before they become a problem, is somewhat predicated on our ability to have a mission command capability at that level. So for the first time in the AFSBN history, we have 04 majors as battalion support operations officers in the AFSBNs, and that's only because we prioritize that over blast teams. It's not that I'm a blast team, non-believer. It's just we have to prioritize with the resources we have. So what are your questions? Yep.
Is that also the TCC or
no.
Just one? Right?
Just so thanks, Donnie. So there are a couple things on the LawCap. This is LawCap 5 planners that we're talking about, and we're about to award LawCap 5 next month. As General Perna's guidance to us was LawCap as part of this is focused on setting the theater for large-scale ground combat operations, and having to come to this job right out of a TSC. Right, I was held accountable, and Michelle Letcher was our Sustained Brigade commander. We were jointly held accountable by the ASCC commander to set the theater for a big tip fit flow, right, a large-scale ground combat operation. And although we knew what needed to be done, I knew what needed to be done as the TSC commander. We never quite ever got there, right? We knew we didn't have enough capacity. We had one sustainment brigade. I told Michelle, you go forward to Poland when war breaks out, right? If war breaks out, you go forward to Poland. I'll figure it out in the rear, and I'll use contracted capability or host nation support to fill the gap. But I never had the bandwidth to plan in detail that work ahead of to get the theater set, right? So we had a concept, but we didn't have a thing. So in LOGCAP 5, we've as part of the program, we've resourced planners for all the ASCCs, the corps, all 3 corps, our Field Army, 8th Army, and USASOC and FORSCOM to do the detailed work of how helping the ASCC commander, or whoever it is, FORSCOM or USASOC or the corps or 8th Army, how would they use and employ contracted capability to help do their wartime mission? And so we intentionally didn't put them in the GCC. Because it was a little bit of affordability issue, but candidly, I briefed General Perno on it, and it's my belief that, frankly, I think LOGCAP has been overreached into the GCCs, and that we got to focus on the United States Army and not the GCC. And so every GCC has called me and said, you used to have a LOGCAP planner. The LOGCAP planners, candidly, weren't planners in my estimate. They were more like an L&O. We didn't hold them accountable for planning. We didn't have it written in the PWS a planning deliverable. So essentially they were sensors, LOGCAP sensors out there, and they were more a glorified L&O. So we've changed that LOGCAP 5. There's a deliverable, an annual deliverable, which is a support plan to whatever the O plan or operations dictated by the ASCC or the other requirement owner, and then it becomes U.S. government property when it's handed over. So some have said, hey, Duane, isn't that a little bit of the fox watching the hen house? You have a performance contractor writing a sub-plan for a Army Service Component Command that they might, right? Well, actually, the language I usually get is that they will wind up executing. And I said, yep, that you could perceive it that way, except for 2 things. One, LOGCAP 5, unless there's a JEFO, will require it to be competed, right? So unless it's an emergency, unless Canada invades, Minneapolis, right? It's not an emergency, and so we're gonna compete the contract or compete the requirement. And number 2, it becomes government property when it's handed over at the end of that year. So it requires government oversight, and it's only a suggestion on how contracted capability could be used. We've required in the PWS for it to be articulated in SRC terminology so that the sustainment, the TSC commander could take it and put an RFF in it for military forces to execute it, because it's detailed in SRC equivalents, right? Or you could turn it over to the host nation, or you could turn it over to LOGCAP program to have it competed out, or you can take it to the MIC and have it competed out. There's multiple options. But to answer your question, not GCC, Army, Corps, Army, Service Promoted Commands, Field Army, FORSCOM, and USASOC. So I just got done talking to Kurt Ryan and the USASOC Chief for this past week about how they're going to use them, and you need to just helping them so we hit the ground running with it. Is make sure there's good government oversight. These are TS planners. Let's not turn them into L&Os, et cetera, et cetera. So Kurt's going to look at have them look at the PSA support at ports of embarkation that FORSCOM's responsible for. That they right now that they're doing it onesie twosies as we're deploying the force, but he knows in large-scale ground combat they haven't taken the time to, haven't had the bandwidth to really define it, what ports by phase, and this planner will do that for them and give them a deliverable at the end of the year. And USASOC's looking at it through a similar lens. And what the Army Service Component Command lenses they look through, right? The Corps look, I Corps looking at it through the war plans in the Pacific, 3rd Corps looking at it through their war plans, and 18th Airborne Corps looking at it through their lens. So it is a little distinctly different. It's tied to a deliverable for the first time. And to kind of set the conditions for LOGCAP 5, we've gapped those LOGCAP planners for over a year now. About last January, we gapped them all. As we put bridges in place, we intentionally, I made the decision, General Perna underwrote it, but I intentionally didn't resource them. So nobody's had a LOGCAP planner for over a year, and there's been there's been a couple complaints, right? Hey, we don't have that LOGCAP guy we used to have, but nothing's given because there was no deliverable for. They were a glorified L&O. And we gapped it so we could flush out the DNA pool, frankly, and start off on the right foot as we go to LawCap 5. Thanks for your question. Yes, sir. Any more? We've got one more question. Time for one more. If I don't give you a long answer. Yes, sir.
Hey, you mentioned the FSB commanders running on. What's the time? You mentioned the FSB commanders running LawCap 5, decentralizing them, which is a great idea. What's the time that the contract come out? I know they've been tied together as well. How do you work with that?
Yes, sir. So of course, ACC does the acquisition end of it, and then we run the program, program office. In the middle of that is the requirement owner, right? So I am confident that ACC is in the band of excellence with what they're doing, despite the fact that I believe they're under-resourced in the CCAS part of the LawCap mission. Right? DCMA walked away from that a couple years ago, and ACC picked it up with no additional resources. But yet, I believe they're in the band of excellence. I believe the program office is in the band of excellence. The gap in the middle really is the requirement owner. So translating requirements from let's just use ASCCs as an example, translating that requirement into a program office so that we can do what needs to be done and then get it over to ACC for execution is really, I don't believe we're in the band of excellence. We've decentralized that middle piece. I believe, this is no slight on anybody, that most Army requirement holders are not fully educated or living up to their responsibilities, and that the fact that the way we've implemented our program office responsibilities through very decentralized use of primarily reserve component officers and NCOs as logistic or LawCap support officers at the field at the far edge of the empire has marginally filled the gap. So I believe holding the brigades and the battalions accountable is the first step to getting that. So what we've done over the last year is we've assigned LawCap professionals to the brigades, not attached, not direct support, not AdCon. We've assigned them. Carl Cartwright is working now. I've told him I want to do the same thing at the battalions. And where will I get the people? Out of my headquarters. I'm going to pull them out of the program office and put them in the theater battalions and create a LawCap cell to theater battalions. The LawCap support brigade is a reserve component organization. Will still be a big part of that. Instead of employing one, individual action figures to the fringe of the empire, we'll deploy them as a cell at the battalion and brigade. And maybe for the first time, we'll define roles and responsibilities at echelon, AFSBN, AFSB, program office. Candidly, it's program office and ACC today, and a couple months from now we'll have it echeloned out. So thanks for your attention again. Scott and George and I will be over in the corner all week long. If you want to deep dive on anything else we're doing or further understand it, I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Set up your